Hello and welcome to Take This TV, the television book club podcast where each week we watch an episode or two of our favorite shows and we talk about them with our friends in the fandom. Guess who that is? It's you. Oh my gosh. Hello. I'm Carmen and I'm joined as always by the wonderful Kimberly Woods. Hello.
Hello, hot potatoes.
We're watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith this season. Which episode are we talking about today, Kimberly?
Today we're talking episode 7, and it's called Infidelity. John spends time with new friend Bev after HiHi suggests he and Jane take space. Jane worries John will forget their shared fun. John's infidelity strains his relationship with Jane. Oh boy, does it.
Wait, HiHi suggests that they take space? I don't remember that.
Well, yeah, that's interesting that it says that. I know the therapist was like, maybe ask your, boss to see if you can take separate assignments. But it's interesting that it says HiHi suggests he and John take space.
And we do
and there's
get a
so
bit
much,
like
you said, Carmen, there's so much happening that we don't see.
Yeah,
Like
a lot of
times
stuff
when they're reporting their
off-screen.
missions, we don't see all the stuff they're saying to HiHi. And
If you'll allow me a mild tangent, this was one of the things I hated the most about the Fox X-Men movies. Don't get me wrong, there was some great ones in there, but it's so much character development and stuff happens off camera, and then the characters are like, "Oh yeah, remember that thing?" And I think it's cool for the characters to have a life outside of the stuff that we're seeing in the world building and all that. It's great, but it's make it make sense.
yeah.
So-
Sometimes we feel a little disconnected as an audience because we're like, wait, we didn't experience that with them though.
Yeah.
They're here now, and I get it. There's stuff happened, but yeah.
What do? So we start this episode and we immediately see John and Jane are sleeping in separate beds again.
Sad face.
Sad face, emoticon. But Max, the best character, is still there. So we see Jane kind of going through, starting her day, and she's going for a walk. And we're like, oh, where's Jane going? And then she goes to this person's house, and the subtitles tell me that this person is named Bev. But
Okay.
at this point in time, we don't know that. And so I was like, well, this person has a name, so they must be important. So Jane goes in there, and Bev is like, would you like something to drink? And Jane says yes, which isn't an answer because Bev gives her options. And so it's it's kind of weird. And at first in my head, I was like, okay, John and Jane are having problems. Jane's been on Tinder. And this is a booty call, and she's going to hook up with this person, Bev. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what was happening yet. I was like, what is going on here?
But then Jane pulls a gun out.
Yeah, after Bev, who's played by Michaela Cole, who I love, comes back, she's carrying 2 cups of hot tea for them, and Jane pulls a gun out and immediately starts questioning Bev.
Yes.
Yeah. How
And at
long
first
have you
I
been
was like-
seeing my husband?
Yes. I was like, what is happening? But then she says, how long have you been seeing my husband? And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. And we find out that they met a month ago. So, a month has elapsed.
Yeah, if not more.
Off
Yeah.
camera, if not more, that we haven't seen. Yeah, so immediately Jane starts grilling Bev. Bev says they met a month ago. And she's like, what do you guys do together? Jane's like, what do you guys do together? And she's like, we just watch movies and drink and smoke.
And I just want to just say, now, come on. We watch movies. Come on. Jane, you were born at night, but it wasn't last night, my guy. Come on. You know what that means.
We Netflix and chill, yeah.
But Jane just gets right to the point because that's who she is. And she's like, do y'all have sex? And Bev says
And
no.
she's upset.
She has a gun.
She is so upset. I know, but Jane, I'm saying, is so emotional in this moment.
Oh, yeah.
When she's questioning her, and we're like, okay, so they've been having problems, but Jane is clearly
She still really cares.
Yeah, she still really cares about him. But Bev, it's interesting, right? Because Bev, she is nervous. Like, she's like, I'm nervous with the gun pointed at her. But when I was first watching, I was like, she's not as nervous as she could be. Like, this, which we later find out that she's a spy for a different company, a competitor. But I think it's interesting because I was like, looking at her posture, like, wow, she seems like pretty composed. Like, yeah, she's a little nervous, but she's pretty composed here.
Yeah, they do a good job of building tension because when Jane pulled the gun and they were sitting down and she's questioning about how long you've been seeing my husband, my first thought was like, wait, like she recognized Jane when Jane came to the door and she let Jane in the house. So like what? Like what is like what like if I'm if I'm out here on the creep tip and I'm creeping around and I see the person I'm creeping with's partner at the door, I'm not home, my guy. I'm not home. I'm gonna pull a Scott Pilgrim and jump out the back window and I'm out of here. Like what? Like
yeah.
So I was really like suspicious because I was like, okay, well something is up because it's not just like a normal situation. But we do see that Bev like smashes the teacups because she's trying to set them down and smashes them. And like you mentioned, we later find out that Bev is a spy at a rival organization, and so maybe she was trying to do that to get the upper hand on Jane. But at first I was like, oh, you're just nervous or whatever.
It's funny because also Jane here is like trying to get information about what John has shared with Bev about her. So we find out, that John is wondering if they're compatible or not. But then Bev says something like, but he wants to be with you incompatibly.
Which like a lot of things in this show, I'm like, is that romantic? I don't think so. To me it's not, but but Jane's like, oh,
yeah. So it's just funny that the comedy a little bit in that about her trying to reassure Bev, who's pointing a gun at her. I mean, sorry, not reassure Bev, reassure Jane. In the middle of this conversation, John shows up at the door.
Right. Oh, and there's that moment where like Jane kind of starts to open up and it's like, he's just been so distant or whatever. And then Bev is like, we're not bonding, by the way. Like, you have a gun on me, to be clear. Yeah. And I loved that because I was like, John and Jane operate on another planet. And it was nice for somebody to be like, in the real world for a second, to be like, yeah, that's not what this is.
That was funny. John shows up and then Bev is like, okay, John's here. What do you want me to do? And Jane's like, don't tell him I'm here. Just, continue as normal. Like goes and hides.
She does. But we do see Bev be a little standoffish for John. Because like when he gets there, he's like, come here. And he's like trying to be really cuddly and intimate and kiss her and stuff. But she's like really kind of putting up a barrier.
Yeah. He brings over the 2 popsicles. It's like, come here. It's like, oh my God, what is this going to be like if, Jane wasn't watching? Yeah, that was kind of awkward.
I thought
what
it was
did you
a
think
cool,
about that?
like, flip on the dynamic of like, we've seen them be in a lot of situations where they're being hunted or they're in danger. But it was cool to see a moment where like Jane is the danger. Jane is the hunter in this particular situation. Especially when they're on the couch together and John's being all relaxed, but we can see that Bev is really nervous about what's going to happen next.
And then we get that moment when they're, Netflix and chilling, watching a movie, where John drops the act and is like, "Where's my wife?"
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, we find out that HiHi had told John that Jane was over at Bev's.
And that HiHi also told Jane that John was with Bev.
Yeah, and that John hadn't finished his mission because Bev had been his mission for a whole month.
Mm-hmm. And so we don't know, well, I think we do know that, John was supposed to assassinate Bev.
Yeah.
And Jane was like, that doesn't take you a month to do that. Like, why you essentially once the jig is up and John's like, where's my wife? Then Bev starts to fight both John and Jane. And she nearly kills John and escapes out of the house. But as they're sort of in pursuit of Bev, because Jane cuts the cord off of John's neck and saves him, Jane mentions that she feels like John has been having an emotional affair. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I could feel that. I mean, he's been over there opening up to this person that he's supposed to be killing and telling them all about their life. I mean, he's told, like Bev knows he's a spy. Bev knows all about Jane. Like, he's been sharing so much. So it really does feel like he was emotionally cheating.
The worst spy ever.
Yeah, like, why are you telling her all these, another spy? You know she's another spy.
It reminded me of like how people, like one of my friends pointed out that James Bond is the worst spy because he's supposed to be a secret agent, but he goes around telling everybody his name, and he's like kind of infamous at this point because people know who he is, and it's like you're supposed to be a secret agent, and so John is very much taking notes from that book of like he is very bad at keeping secrets, and he's not taking the job very seriously, and it's really costing them.
He's very much putting his emotions before his work.
Mm-hmm.
And we also find out that, like, he's told them details about their missions because when they're going and trying to find her, because he had placed a tracker on Bev, it leads them to their first mission at the restaurant where they're watching the lady who's supposed to be getting a package. And Jane's like, how did she know about this place? And also, like, not only was it their first mission, it was technically kind of their first date.
It was.
So it's like, ooh.
John's messing up all over the place. Oh, there is one point before that when they're in the bodega, because John has the tracker, but his phone dies. And so he's trying to charge his phone, and he goes to the bodega and buys a charger. And then he's like, can I charge my phone? Which, like, you know what? I just want to just quick sidebar because I was also watching the show Dave, and there's an episode where one of the black characters in the show is trying to charge his phone at a place, and they're like, "Oh, the electricity or whatever," and that's happened to me before, before at a place. And I remember being with some friends, and I went outside and I asked one of my friends to go do it, and they let him do it because he doesn't have the melanin like I do. And I just like, I was so happy that they put that in this show also, because I was like, that's so annoying. Like, I just gave you money for this charger, and like nobody's using this wall. Anyway, I digress. But I love that Jane like orders all this stuff. She gets some bread and licks it.
I love that too.
Because she sees the sign that says that there's only cash and check. And so she tries to pay with a card. And the guy's like, oh, it's cash only. And she's like, well, I guess I have to charge my phone. And while that's kind of happening, John and Jane have this argument. And we learn that Jane figured out all of John's passwords. And that's kind of like how she's been knowing about, well, and also HiHi, which we don't learn until later. But we learn that sort of like Jane's been figuring out John's passwords, and he feels like that's an invasion of privacy. And they're having this big argument in this bodega. And the shop owner is just kind of like watching, eating his popcorn.
That's so funny. I think, is this where they actually talk about, like, she asks him if they've had sex?
Mm-hmm.
Is this, yeah, so they're talking about, like, you know, did you have sex with her? And John's like, okay, I kissed her, but I didn't have sex because I couldn't get it up.
Yeah. Not for lack of trying, yeah. And then
He
Jane...
felt too guilty about it.
Jane tries to make John feel bad, and she's like, I had sex on missions too with two other people. And, you know, during the argument, they kind of mentioned that, like, we're allowed to have sex on missions, which, like, I don't know how that's, I guess it's like do whatever it takes to get the job done, but it's like new lore about the stuff that we learned.
The work understanding that they've come to.
Yeah. And so they're having this argument. Something else I wrote down that I picked up on, which, like, they're having this argument very loudly in the bodega. So the guy who works there is like learning all this stuff. But what did you pick up on this? So they mentioned that the company is called Mr. and Mrs. Smith's. Because that's when we learned that Bev worked for a rival company. Because, like, John, I think it's John mentions, like, I didn't even know what Mr. and Mrs. Smith was until I talked to Bev because she knew more about it than I did. And that's how we learned that Bev works for a rival company.
Oh.
And I was like, wait,
Yeah.
so the company is called Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And there are rival companies out there, rival spy agencies or whatever. And like, so are all of these organizations secret organizations? Are these government organizations? It reminded me of like Archer with like the agency and the KGB and all that kind of stuff. And so I was just like, I'm really confused about the world building and the lore. But
Me too.
It was kind of nice that it was casually brought up in conversation, so that we're not like the characters aren't being expository about it. But at the same time, it's like I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
And like what's going on with the companies. But yeah, did you pick up on that at all?
I think now that you mentioned it, I do remember them saying that. But I think I was so focused on, oh, shoot, she does work for a rival company and wondering about the world building behind that.
Yeah.
Because she was clearly, beating them at their own game.
Yes, very easily.
I wrote down a note in here, too. I liked the nod to Michaela Cole's show, Bubblegum. I don't know if you've seen that, Carmen, but I love that show. She's so great in it. But the postcard that she sticks, like when they go hunt her down and it has her tracker on it and it's on the restaurant, she sticks it with bubble gum. And I was like, oh, that's a little cute Easter egg.
That's awesome. Yep. I love little moments like that.
Yeah. During this whole time, too, I was admiring Maya playing sick. Like, she did a good job of, because Jane is, like, so sick this whole episode, as well as emotional, but like I thought she did a great job of bringing that and making that feel real, that like cold, stuffy sickness feeling, because she's like so sick this whole episode. She
is. I love John and Jane. I think Maya and Donald do a great job as those characters, and it's so fun to see like their dynamic together. But like you mentioned, just like watching their marriage fall apart in real time is tough to watch.
It's so tough.
And so like as they're kind of having this argument, they get the phone charged, they're back on the trail. They follow her into a place and they see that she goes into a white door. They can't get in. I feel like, did they try the door and the door is just locked?
I feel like it.
Okay. And then they try to go to an adjacent building. And the guy's like, no, you can't go upstairs or whatever. And so, like, here's the thing. Not to, like, I don't know, not to, like, be a Sith Lord or anything, but I also just, like, confused about the rules of their job. Like, what is the extent of their license to kill? Because, like, if I was them, and it's like I'm on my last strike, and bad stuff is going to happen that I may or may not know about, and I know that my target is upstairs, and some random guy in a bodega is telling me it's 15 cents for a napkin and that I can't go upstairs, I'm killing everybody in the restaurant. Like, sorry, bro, but I need to get upstairs and you're in the way. But John and Jane are less morally bankrupt than I am, I guess. And so they don't do that.
And sometimes in the past, like HiHi has said, like no other casualties or no outside,
True, and we don't know what the terms of the mission are. So
but otherwise, it's like I don't feel their desperation as far as like losing out on this, like their third strike. Like that heightened feeling is not there for them.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we were saying in our last episode of like the second strike that they got and then this mission, like the tension and the anxiety isn't really there because a lot of stuff is happening off camera. And so it's like, oh, this wacky hijinks are happening on this mission, but I'm kind of more focused on like what's going on with Bev and John and like why are they fighting and all this. What's Mr. and Mrs. Smith's? But it's like you don't really feel the pressure of like, oh, this is our last strike. We have to be successful.
I think also what makes it a little bit unclear is that we know that they're taking a break, kind of like they're exploring different work assignments. So it's like, does this strike just count against John? Does it count for both of them? What has Jane been doing? Like, has she had her own missions? It's like we haven't gotten a taste of that, really.
It is unclear. And also from what we learned from John 2 and Jane 2 previously is that like couples can't break up. So the fact that they're able to like have some kind of separation with their work and home life seems like very different from what we previously learned about the job. So lots of questions, lots of things that I feel like are just kind of like feeling a little rushed. But
yeah.
Eventually,
and also like we don't know, Carmen, like what, because HiHi we know has been stoking stuff and instigating stuff and seeming to be trying to cause this tension between them. So we don't know if they've continued to do that over the course of episodes that we haven't seen that have taken place, in our minds.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I definitely think that when you're making anything, and there's so many factors that go into making anything. So I think it's easy to be like, oh, well, this should happen or that should happen. But we don't know what it was like when they're actually making the show. And it's like, there's just always stuff that's going to have to get cut and all that, especially when a big project like this. But I do think that there's just some things that like for the lore and like the overall plot just don't really line up and make you feel kind of wanting. But for this particular mission, they do find that Bev is on the move again. And like you mentioned before, they go to the restaurant where they had their first date. Bev is gone and has taken the tracker off and is in the wind. So they officially fail and get their last strike. And so they go back home, dejected and defeated.
Maya's sick as a dog.
So sick.
And he's like, let me make you some soup. And she's like, no, our neighbor made me some. And goes upstairs and is like sick in bed. But the moment that I do love is when he FaceTimes his mom and is like trying to get the recipe for how to make soup for her. It's really sweet.
That was really sweet. I also love that he throws
she's like,
the neighbor's soup
you need chicken
away.
feet. And he's like, no. Yeah. She wants him to have like chicken feet in it. And she's like, I wouldn't want it without that. But then she's like, okay, well, do you have cayenne pepper? Like, that's always nice. But it's just I really love that moment.
It was really sweet.
And so he makes the soup for her. He brings it up. And she actually likes it, tells him she likes it.
Yeah, she's like, this is really good.
But then, Carmen, the next moment, right after she says that, he says, I'm done, Jane. I'll leave in the morning.
Man, the salt and the sugar, they're mixing together in this. So yeah, it's like he has this really sweet moment where he's talking to his mom. He's making this for Jane. And you're like, maybe they're going to be like, hey, we failed, but we're in this together. And nope. John's like, I'm out of here.
It's so sad. She throws the computer on the floor in frustration after he says that. And then we get the bonus scene, right?
Oh, well, there's actually one more thing. We get the bonus
scene.
There actually is one more thing before that. When John brings her the soup, they kind of start to talk a little bit about what happened in the failure. And Jane is hesitant to let HiHi know that they failed. And as they start to put the pieces together and share information with one another, they start to realize that like HiHi is kind of playing them and like has been giving each of them sort of information about what the other is doing and instigating, like you said. And my thought on, and then after that, John just gets frustrated, just messages HiHi and is like, we failed or whatever. And then HiHi replies,
even though Jane said wait, Jane was like, wait, don't do it. And then he's like, I'm doing it. Boop.
Yeah. And then HiHi is like, await and further instructions.
Yeah.
And then John says he's leaving. Jane smashes the laptop and we get the bonus scene.
Which is a package delivery, maybe from a, low-level risk, Smith. And it's a new computer. So somehow HiHi knew that Jane's computer was broken.
How did they know? I don't know.
Eyes and ears everywhere.
Everywhere. I definitely was like, I feel like John and Jane are so, I can't nail down like who they are. And I mean, just because like the fact that they hadn't talked about it until that point of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe HiHi is trying to like get us to be in conflict with one another. And they're like, oh, well, I'm leaving.
I know. like sometimes it turns so fast. And again, I can't tell if it's because there's stuff we haven't seen. So it's like because of stuff we haven't seen. But like as the audience, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Just talk to each other.
So are you still loving it?
I mean, this is, I want them to get better, Carmen. I want the relationship to be better. So it's not as fun for me watching them when they're not having fun themselves.
Yeah.
So I hope it gets better. I hope they can patch things up because we only have one more episode to go.
There's only one left.
Are you looking forward to it, Carmen?
I think the show's kind of lost me a bit.
Yeah.
I definitely think if I was watching this on my own, I probably would have fell off. But we'll see what happens in the next episode. So hopefully they could bring it back with the next, with the finale. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review. Tell us what you thought on social. We're at Take This TV on TikTok and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the club. And remember, it's dangerous to watch TV alone.